r/AskReddit. People who believe JFK was killed by some sort of a conspiracy, and not just Oswald. What are the biggest/most important pieces of evidence that support your theory? Operation Northwoods. You can read the government declassified documents of this proposal, which was rejected by Kennedy about a year before his death. Basically, it was a proposal to have CIA agents, or friendly anti-communist Cubans, pose as Cuban terrorists, and commit terrorism in Cuba and the United States for the sole reason to drum up American support for an invasion or military campaign in Cuba to topple Castro and replace him with a puppet for the U.S. Also known as a false flag operation. It sounds like conspiracy theory, but it's not. It's a government document. Kennedy rejected the proposal, and it ended there. Roughly a year later, he was assassinated. Also, Kennedy wanted to shut down the federal government and reduce power of the bankers who control the USD. Basically, Kennedy was a troublemaker when it came to the plans of the elite power holders who work behind the scenes. They took care of him, and most likely used his assassination as a "this is what happens if you don't play ball" sort of example for others in political and business positions of power. This is just my opinion. The Cuban government would not have been involved in any plot to kill the POTUS. Any proof of their involvement would mean destruction of their country by US military forces. They knew that. Russia too. Now, there could and most likely would have been Cubans involved, because if it is not true that Oswald acted alone, but that the CIA is behind the assassination, it all would stem from the Bay of Pigs failed invasion. The BOP was a CIA operation. That's established fact. Their plan was, once the invasion started, the US military would step in to help, such as providing air cover. That didn't happen, because President Kennedy refused. That caused the BOP operation to fail, when it could have succeeded. Kennedy later fired the then CIA director and his top 2 underlings. So there was a faction inside the CIA that was highly pissed at JFK, so that's the Cuban connection. Some of the CIA operatives were Cubans, exiles and the like, and there well could have been some Cuban government counter-agents involved on the periphery. That the CIA was pissed to the point they might kill the POTUS was well known at the time, which is why many have always suspected them. It is no new revelation. So, that leaves 2 possibilities. Either Oswald did act alone, or it was a CIA rogue faction operation. That would also require many insiders in Texas to pull this off and keep it hid, and LBJ would be the one behind that. LBJ ran the crooks in Texas at the time that would be required to pull this off. Copy from a previous comment of mine. I believe that Kennedy was almost certainly struck in the head twice by separate bullets, while the official story can only explain 1 gunshot to the head. The autopsy report on JFK says that he can an entrance wound near the base of the back of the head, 5 centimeters to the right and slightly above the external occipital protuberance. 7 autopsy participants, including the 3 pathologists who examined his body and the photographer, have made statements indicating that they saw an entry wound in that location. This actually creates problems with the official story, because that entry wound could not be related to the large wound, presumably of exit on the top right side of the head. If a bullet entered there and somehow managed to exit from that location despite requiring a sharp 90-degree upwards deflection, it would have caused severe damage to the cerebellum. The official brain photographs do not show a torn open cerebellum. The location of the entry wound indicated by the autopsy doctors borders on the occipital and cerebellum lobes of the brain. In order to reconcile both wounds, the large head wound had to be created by a separate bullet striking the side of the skull. How does the official version handle this? The House Select Committee on Assassinations investigation in the late 70s simply theorized that the autopsy report and autopsy participants were wrong and the entry wound was on the top of the head, 4 to 5 inches above the external occipital protuberance. They contended that this idea fits better with a single shot from the school book depository. I think that idea is virtually baseless. The biggest mystery in the forensic evidence is now what happened to the bullet that entered low near the base of the back of the head near the external occipital protuberance. Just read through the document dump. There was more than one shooter. 3 bullet holes in the car, including one in the windshield. They believe someone was shooting from the bridge in front of the car. There is evidence of prior knowledge of the shooting, so take that as you will. like phone calls and stuff days prior to the events. Also, the KGB and CIA both believe Lyndon Johnson could have been involved. It will be interesting to see someone compile all this into some sort of documentary. Right now it's just a jumbled mess of documents, but if you put together all the pieces, I bet it's super interesting / mind-blowing. Drive. James Hughes and Commander Boswell at Bethesda Naval Hospital are the main cover-up criminals who actually obstructed justice most directly. We don't have to guess. The paper trail is all there. There is record of 3 different caskets deliveries at Bethesda around the time of the presidential entourage's landing at Andrews AFB. One cheap shipping casket 6:35 p.m. taken to immediate skull sawing from the front of the head wound, right in front of military guard witnesses who were told to leave the room. Boy AGN military report. The bronze ceremonial, empty casket shown on TV, arrived at Bethesda at 7:17 p.m. which sat in a different anteroom until they brought in different guys to move it, after adding JFK's body to be wheeled back in the examination room for all the doctors to see in the autopsy at 8:30 p.m. Clandestine emergency front of head wound covering surgery was performed by Drive, who's between 6:35 p.m. and 7:15 p.m. All of the witnesses in Dallas saw a different head wound on the president than what the autopsy describes, and what witnesses in the Bethesda autopsy describe, with the entire top of JFK's head gone and brain able to fall out freely. Dallas witnesses all describe a smaller, 5-7 centimeters, rear right head wound with the cerebellum destroyed, but the rest of the president's brain not falling out at all. I believe the first throat shot and the fatal headshot on JFK came from the parking lot on the other side of the overpass from the traditional grassy knoll area. I also believe the sniper was in a vehicle trunk, or in between vehicles, similar to how the DC snipers of the early 2000s were sometimes well hidden and so hard to find. The real assassin could have easily laid down in a back end of a station wagon with the tail light pulled down, put the light back after event, and drive off a few minutes later in the confusion around the book depository. The other gunman most likely slipped out the side doors of the TSBD after trying to mostly kill Kennedy. JFK's head snapping back and to the left could be explained easily by a front right headshot from above left. There are a few, but most are circumstantial. However, there are some elements that don't hold up to scrutiny. Moments after the shots were fired, Oswald was sighted by at least 2 people, the manager of the book depository and a police officer, in the second floor break room, calmly drinking a Coke. Women on the stairs did not see Oswald pass them, which he would have done running from the 6th floor to the 2nd. The sheer impossibility of the magic bullet theory. Bullets do not do what the Warren Commission claimed, and they certainly don't do it and remain unharmed. Numerous witnesses who heard more than 3 shots, and who identified at least some of those shots as coming from the grassy knoll. The fact that the exit wound was in the back of Kennedy's head. The fact that Oswald didn't have nitrate residue on his face, which he would have had from firing a rifle. It's often claimed that he could have washed his face, but he did have nitrate residue on his hands. He really couldn't have washed his face without also washing his hands. The House Committee on Assassination's findings that Oswald, while a shooter, did not act alone. I swear, I'm not usually a conspiracy nut. I don't think there are alien bodies. I'm fully on board with the moon landing, and I don't believe that Trump is a lizard man. There are just a lot of elements of the Warren Commission's report that don't add up. I heard a theory that the kill shot was done by a Secret Service agent. He was in the car in front of the president, and when he went to return fire his car sped up causing him to fall as he was shooting. His shot then hit the president's head causing him to move his head back and to the left. It was covered up because it was an embarrassment to the Secret Service. Probably all lies, but it's something that I heard that was really interesting and plausible. If you look at the political climate and tolerance level of the US at the time, a mere 18 years after the end of WI, when nationalism and American pride were very high, a liberal president like Kennedy seemed pretty out there to many conservatives, with numerous affairs, in a time when that stuff was frowned upon. Not to mention how people adored Jackie, the uncertainty of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and after just coming out of the Korean War, there were more JFK detractors than Trump detractors, and JFK seemed like an unpredictable loose cannon. There was a lot of distrust of him in the FBI and the government in general, and some thought he needed to be reined in. J. Edgar Hoover had, for years, been pretty iron-fisted in saving the US from itself, and was just a bit too paranoid not to be considered in the puzzle surrounding the assassination. As far as who did it / who was behind it, etc. I'll leave that for speculation, but JFK didn't do himself any favors by his actions and reputation, giving alone not just enough reason to act on what he, at least, thought was the public sentiment. I don't know how accurate this is, because I watched the documentary years ago. They were testing the same gun that was used to recreate the results of the shots. They showed that, yes, the brain could blow out the back when he was shot from the back. However, the bolt action, I think that's what it was, on the rifle could barely be pulled back in the time span of the 3 shots. The documentary completely glossed over that after mentioning. It really confused me more than anything. I haven't done research on the Kennedy assassination, so if you have an explain, please comment. My evidence is thin, and probably the film is no longer available, plus neither the Lincoln Kennedy was riding in. I have a photographic memory, and I saw the first showing of the Zapruder film, before it was altered, or not altered all the way as it is being shown now. There are also snippets of other films that show what I saw too. There was a bullet striking the front windshield low just right of the driver that must have come from the railroad overpass or grass / parking area to the left of the motorcade. Also, the original film shows the driver of the limousine nearly braking to an abrupt nearly full stop. There is also a bullet hole in the dash just right of the driver that came from behind. Probably Oswald's third shot that missed, and another shooter behind the fence or railroad area completed the explosive headshot. Oswald could have done all the shooting, but the number of bullet holes in the Lincoln don't match the Oswald shots. Oswald missed his first shot due to deflection of a tree limb or street sign crossbar. His second shot was the magic bullet that came out of Kennedy's neck and into Connally, as was supposedly found at the hospital. Oswald's third shot, if hit Kennedy's head, was too high an impact to put the bullet hole in the dash. Witnesses at the hospital also say there was a bullet that is the sun visor area from behind, and that there was a bullet hole in the rear seat back that came from the front. The rifle he used a Italian-made Carcano, which was called the worst infantry rifle of World War II for a reason. Coming from a guy who shot a Carcano, I wouldn't even dream of trying to assassinate the president with one. How accurate he was with it, and how quickly he got off those shots whilst being very accurate is very fishy to me. Hitting a moving target 3 times, from that distance, with a Carcano? Something just doesn't add up to me. This is of course dismissing all the other evidence in this thread, but based on the weapon he used, and how accurate he was with it, it just doesn't make sense. There are many problems with the official story. The magic bullet problem. The trajectory of the bullet proposed by the Warren Commission report is simply nonsensical. Multiple doctors examined JFK's body in Dallas that day, all of which described the exit wound of the bullet as being in the rear of the head. The WCR claims that this is possible for a bullet fired from the rear of the motorcade. The grassy knoll. The preponderance of witnesses interviewed that day, including a police officer who was on the scene, identified the shots as having originated from behind a fence on the grassy knoll in front and to the left of the presidential motorcade. This is far more consistent with the forensic analysis of the bullet trajectory. The police officer confronted a man behind the fence immediately following the shooting, who identified himself as a Secret Service agent, producing papers which seemingly corroborated this fact. This is inconsistent with the fact that all Secret Service agents who were assigned to the president's detail that day were positioned in the motorcade itself. The gun that it is alleged that Oswald used to fire the lethal shots is an Italian rifle called the Carcano. This rifle is certainly not known for its accuracy, however it does happen to be bolt action. This important when one considers the fact that the Zapruder film, a continuous shot of the assassination, shows that the 3 shots were fired over the course of 5-8 seconds. The Carcano is not able to fire shots this quickly at maximum speed, not even accounting for trying to aim accurately. What gives here? There are more, but I'm tired. Will likely update if this gets any traction. I don't know too much about it, so I may be wrong on what the details are, but the official story is physically impossible. I remember seeing a video of a guy on YouTube sometime using the rifle Oswald used. I don't know if he had the right rifle, so it may not be accurate, and shooting and reloading it as fast as he could, shooting from the hip. He was barely able to fire as fast as Oswald. It's not possible to aim and fire as quickly as Oswald did. It's like me saying I ran the 100-meter sprint in 5.04 seconds. Sure, it's possible if I move my legs fast enough, but it's not possible for a human. That and the fact that a president who vowed to break up the CIA was assassinated, and his assassin was also assassinated, and the amount of accident/murders of people around the case/witnesses are bizarrely high. Yeah, he was killed. Thanks for watching UpGoat Reddit. Try like and subscribe button if it still works.